everyone. Welcome to No Sweat. We're having candid conversations weekly about what we're hearing and seeing in the ad industry. And I'm Nora.
And I'm Eric.
And we are co-founders of Blood, Sweat, and Tears. We are a growth consultancy for ad agencies. We've both worked in and outside the four walls for many years. And every week we're talking to agency owners and founders about the challenges they're facing in building, growing, and even selling their businesses. And so we want to bring those conversations to you and hope that they can add some value to the agencies that you're building as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Nora. So we are using ourselves as the example that we often talk about to our clients, and that is setting tactics based on a growth strategy and then executing them. The things that we talk about most often the agencies are struggling with are a clear strategy to drive their growth goals and then applying the tactics that make sense for them. And Nora, for a long time, this has been something that you and I have talked about. And again, we're using ourselves as an example and we're being transparent here. We're about 2 years into our business. And for about 2 years, we've been talking about doing a show. And we understand all the reasons why sometimes tactics don't get done from resource constraints and figuring out what works and what doesn't. But Nora, for you and I, we're both very extroverted. As you mentioned, we have a lot of conversations daily with agency owners. We're exposed to a lot. And what we wanted to do is take those insights, the challenges and the outcomes, the solutions, the considerations, and bring them to our audience.
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. And one thing we tell our clients, like, 2 years into working together, we're completing each other's sentences. We know our catchphrases, but one of the things we both say is that conversations are the number one KPI. So when everyone's thinking about the bottom of the funnel and conversion and win rate and how many pitches have you done or won, well, you have to think a little further up the funnel to how many conversations are you having? And a lot of founders do get limited eventually by the size of their network. They don't continue to scale or expand their network, and therefore they're just not having enough conversations or enough of the right conversations. I was just having a talk with a founder of an agency yesterday, and we were talking about how she's just not fishing in the right ponds. And so you could be she's actually having a good volume of conversations, but she's decided based on her close rate, she's not having the right conversations with the right people. So we talk about that a lot, but the way to have conversations is to think about, how do you like to have conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, Nora, it's really about how can you show up most authentically. I mean, we've all seen examples and we've all kind of landed in those spots where we're doing things that don't totally make sense. And oftentimes that comes out of a lack of strategy to inform how and where you should be showing up. But the great news is for every agency, there is a way to authentically show up. Something that you love to do, something that you're great at, a skill set that you or your team has. And again, the right strategy is going to inform that. And then when you can show up in those authentic ways, then you have more of the right conversations, because not only are you representing yourself and your agency the right way, you're aligning ideally with your ICP, your ideal client profile, the types of prospects that you yearn to win. And then it feels natural on both sides. Like, Nora, like you said, it's like for you and I, it's really easy for us to show up in a conversation, whether that's digitally or in person or on a stage, but that's not the case for everyone. And so if you're forced into that tactic, then it feels really uncomfortable. I mean, we've all been on the other side of a conversation where it was like, man, like this person, like this isn't the best format for this person. And so again, identifying those places where you can authentically show up starts to really change the perspective of growth, I think, because then it doesn't feel like you're pushing a boulder up a hill. You're actually getting to show up and do the things that you love to do.
I used to work, my career before consulting was working in agencies, being a head of growth and marketing. And so I would have to be the one that went around to everybody on blog day and be like, hey, where's your blog? I I kid you not, people would run away. They would see me coming. They knew what I was coming for, and they would turn and walk away or run because they knew they didn't want to do it. They didn't like writing. They hadn't done it because they don't like it. They pushed it off. And here comes me trying to get the blog so we can post it or whatever and use it. But, what I really should have said at that time to that particular agency owner is, Look around. 80% of your staff hates to write. Why are we blogging? Like, maybe instead we should do a show. Maybe instead we should make more social content. We should do video. We should go to more events. And, we talk all the time about different tactics hit at different parts of the funnel. You could be doing too much up funnel, too much down funnel, or you could be not addressing, you know, you're doing too many things in too many parts of the funnel, so you're doing too many, things half-assed, and we don't wanna do that either. So, really, when we try to when we're working with clients, we try to really understand, what is it that you like to do? What is it that feels like hitting your head against that brick wall, or your team? And sometimes when we're doing workshopping with founders of agencies, we'll have 3 different founders at the table, one representing creative, one strategy, one accounts. They all like to do different things, they all have different skill sets. One of them does not ever wanna go to an event. One of them could talk to a brick wall and loves to go to events. Great. So we now know we're gonna put this person in charge of the events, we're gonna put this person in charge of the writing or the content creation, and then everyone feels it's frictionless. It's like taking those hurdles down, it's removing them, and it's making it feel like, "Oh, working on my business, not just in my business, working on it, working on the marketing, working on the branding. Now this feels easier." It feels not easy, but easier. Easier, and sometimes there's a 1 or 2 letter difference, but in a word where we talk about, like, this idea that busy versus business, like, busyness versus business, 1 letter difference between busyness and business, and sometimes, like, we make ourselves really busy and we think we're doing business, but really, we're just busy.
And that directly relates to tactics. We oftentimes see agencies that want to do everything. There's a lot of ideas, some of them valid, some of them not so valid. It's just an idea. And so there has to be a parameter around what we're actually choosing to invest in. And that's something that we spend a lot of time workshopping is one, like you said, Nora, there's a top, middle, and bottom of funnel that's a real thing. And there needs to be tactics that are applied to each of them. So that a prospect or a stakeholder can move naturally through a conversation and a building relationship from going from awareness to conversion in a way that feels natural to both, but also not doing everything so that nothing is done well because it's that idea of just getting started with a lot of things but not finishing them can really derail an agency because then you don't get to the finish line on anything. You're just consistently building something new and starting over, but there's no payoff.
Exactly, Eric. Yeah, we have to be able to ship it. And here is where we will say perfect is the enemy of done. And I know this is really hard, especially if you're running a creative shop. Like, I worked at creative shops my whole career. We always want the best product for our clients. We always want the best for ourselves. We're constantly, trying to tweak it, trying to improve it up until the 11th hour. But then what happens is we just don't ship it. We just don't get enough stuff out there. So we would rather see you be like 75%, 80% of the way there. When we think about especially content, we're thinking this equation, which we use, which is confidence times consistency times time. That's what's going to help you grow through the creation of your content, both inbound and outbound. And if you're confident, but you're not consistent because you're not shipping, because you're noodling it to death and trying to make it perfect, no one is going to hear or see what you have to say. On the flip side, if you have a consistent rhythm, but what you're saying doesn't feel self-confident, people are gonna have a hard time following an unconfident leader into battle. So it's that combination of the confidence and consistency, but then over time, right? It's like when we in growth and in marketing tend to stop and start based on client workload. It's like, oh, we're in planning season. Oh, we're in pitching season. Can't possibly do our own prospecting. Can't possibly like keep going on our own marketing. That's where we don't get momentum where like if you think about a flywheel, it's heavy to get it moving to start. But if you get it moving and you keep it moving, now you have increasing momentum. But it's this stopping and starting and stopping and starting, or just kind of being in our own heads about whether something is worth and ready to be shipped. Just ship it. Just start, as you said, Eric, just start and also just ship.
And that point on time, Nora, is oftentimes someone may not know how long a tactic needs to live before it's optimized or before you can really measure a KPI off of it. And like what you don't want to do is get something started and execute on a tactic for a month or whatever, and it really needs 6 months or even 12 months to come to fruition. So really having the right expectations and also having a partner or a resource that can say, hey, like, this is the tactic, this is the timeline that you need to apply that tactic. These are the KPIs that we need to be measuring, and this is the frequency which we need to optimize. Because I think Nora, you have an analogy about digging for gold. That it's like, if you fall a little bit short, then you've worked really hard, and you've missed the payoff.
Yeah, that story, if anyone's familiar with the graphic for 3 feet from gold, it was, someone who owned a gold mine, and they felt they had tapped it out completely, and to a degree they had with the tools that they had. So they sold the mine to the next owner. The next owner came in with different and better equipment. They started to tap and found a line immediately because the previous owner had actually only been 3 feet from the next line of gold, but they stopped. And so, it's hard to know when to throw it in, and we tend to say of tactics that you're doing from a marketing perspective for your agency, you've got to think about it in quarters and years, not days, weeks, and months, because growth just does not move. The needle doesn't move more than quarterly. And typically, if you're testing a new tactic, you need to give it 2 quarters worth of time to see if it worked, because most of them, even just the setup of them, and then getting that consistent rhythm going, like we talked about, it's gonna take you a few quarters. So, yeah, don't abandon ship on a strategy just because you tried blogging for a couple weeks, a couple months, and it's not bearing fruit yet. It's probably one of those tactics that's just gonna take more time.
Yeah, and Nora, there's certainly ways and things that we may say that make this sound easy, like, oh, there's only three levers or a few things to consider. We know that growth is very hard, and that's why we're going to show up and have these conversations and relay to you what we know and some of the things that we don't know about growth, so that you can inform yourself and your agency about what it's going to take to get to your goals.
And we're always open in the DMs on LinkedIn and in the chat. Drop us questions that you have on this episode. We'd be happy to talk to you. We're having industry shop talk every day, all day, every day. We're here for you to chat. So yeah, drop us any questions you got. But we'll be back next week. And let's leave a little preview. What are we gonna talk about next week, Eric?
I think next week we're probably going to be talking about, again, one of our favorite tactics. It's being in person.
Getting out there. If you're a founder, you got to get out there. So we'll talk about that next time.
For now, that's a wrap for this episode of No Sweat, where we have conversations about what we're seeing in the industry related to growth. So if you got any value out of our conversation today, we'd love for you to like it, give us some feedback, share it with any of your industry colleagues if you think it could help them. And until then, we'll see you next time.